What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Chocolatito show. And let's jump right in. Let's talk about what just took place here a couple days ago. What a packed weekend full of fights. And without a doubt, the winners, hands down, were us, the fans. As of Friday, that's where the action took place. Friday is where it all kicked off, and it kicked off on the zone by way of Thailand, where Sor Rumvisai had a match against Kwansai Sithmore Singh. Sor Rumvisai seeking his 50th win, and he made easy work of Sithmore Singh. 3 rounds. By the third round, I mean, it almost looked like a sparring match for Sor Rumvisai. It was fairly easy. He was even willing to engage. He was even dropping his hands at one point in the first and second round. Actually, in the second round, if I recall, he has Sithmore Singh against the ropes, drops his hands a little bit, and actually takes some hits, clean shots to the face, willing to take them, willing to feel a little pain in return, and then just continue delivering clean shot after clean shot and combo after combo in what was easy work for him. No ring rust present, and by the third round, Sithmore Singh takes a knee. He ends up just basically succumbing to the damage, gets back up, finishes the round, but does not answer the bell to kick off the fourth round. So good win for Sor Rumvisai, stay busy fight for him. And then it was just time for him to hang out and wait to see what would happen, because he's looming to see whether he would have his third fight against Chocolatito or against Gallo Estrada. He's faced both of them before, and within 24 hours, those two were going to be involved in a headlining event out in Texas at the American Airlines Center in a unification bout. So, easy work for Sor Rumvisai. He sits back. The talks begin. The conversation begins. Who is it better? Does he run it back with Gallo Estrada, or does he go against Chocolatito? He seems to have Chocolatito's number, even knocked him out in one of their 2 times that they faced off against each other, where Chocolatito just looks like he's found his fire once again. So he sits back. Good win for him. We slide over to Saturday and let the fun begin. What an awesome card that they put together. Matchroom Boxing, Eddie Hearn, I mean, he's been doing an awesome job. Every few weeks that he's bringing these cards, he's become the who's who of promoters at the moment. He's putting on good shows. And the cards, he's kind of gotten away from the, how would I say, like the favored fighters, where they're feeding journeymen, or they're feeding lesser fighters to the kid that they're wanting to build up, or the kid that they're wanting to promote, and the next so-called star. So they would just throw a regular run-of-the-mill journeyman, someone who's on their way out or on the latter stages of their career, for the sake of these guys looking good. And you still see it happening, right? You still see it happening. Definitely the British boxer. There's a couple British boxers that come to mind. Chris Eubanks Jr. is one of them, who has all the potential in the world. All the hype is there. He has the name by way of his father, and the legacy that his father left in the 160 and 168 pound division. And he's not living up to it. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., right? Another one who would just take on easy fights, opponents that were unknown, relatively unknown to the public, and just so he could look good. And Eddie Hearn's kind of putting that aside. Golden Boy's been doing a fairly good job. And what we're seeing is not that they're uneven cards or that they're not exciting cards, but we're seeing good prospects face off against other good prospects. Kids that are making noise around the amateur ranks, kids that have been making noise in their quick ascension to their careers, and they have small records, but winning records at that. And so they're facing off. Their matchmaking is fairly well, even, unbiased, and it's creating for some exciting matchups. To give you an example, one of their early cards, or one of the early fights on the card, Raymond Ford versus Aaron Perez, both of them undefeated fighters, 8-0 Raymond Ford against Aaron Perez. And it was just a back and forth awesome fight to watch. It was well contended. It was well fought, well executed by both sides. A lot of strategy behind it. Good boxing on both ends, and they end up coming away with a draw. It had some slow points during several points during each respective round or several respective rounds, but nonetheless, you could tell at the level of boxing at where they're at the point in their career where they find themselves at the moment. And it was a great fight for both of them. So that was good matchmaking where these guys are there. They're not being matched with anybody lesser. So they could, one or the other could look good, or they're not being matched with anybody of a higher caliber, which often destroys these young kids' careers as they're finding their way into the ranking system and climbing up the ranks in their young careers. So good matchup. Aaron Perez, Raymond Ford, that ended up in a draw. The next matchup, Suleiman Sissoko is the hype. He has a little bit of hype, and he got to show his talents. He got his 11th win by way of TKO, stops Daniel Echeverria in the 6th round. Daniel Echeverria, journeyman, 21-10 record. Now, Daniel Echeverria, he was just outclassed. Suleiman Sissoko is one to keep an eye out for. And the one that I was looking for, the sleeper that I was telling you guys, at least I was saying don't sleep on this fight because it was bound to be fun. Mama's boy, Dennis Douglin, who nicknamed, I guess appropriately, right? Mama's boy because his mom actually helps train him. Or I'm going to use past tense to help train them. And I'll tell you why here in a second. Austin Ammo Williams, he's been building a lot of hype, or I guess I should say that there's been a lot of hype that's starting to surround this young kid, Austin Ammo Williams, in the middleweight division. Dennis Douglin came down from 168 to 160 to fight Austin Williams, and they had a good matchup through and through. Dennis Douglin, the veteran that he is, being in there with better names in the past, he's got some good names in his resume. He ended up giving Ammo Williams a slight run for his money and some good necessary work. He took him all the way. It went all 8 rounds. Ammo Williams climbing up the ranks. And so it does go all 8 rounds, but it was fairly one-sided in several points of the fight, which gave a clear decision and a unanimous decision to Ammo Williams. Ammo Williams remains undefeated, and Dennis Douglin ends up retiring after the fight. So sad to see Dennis Douglin, because those are good journeymen when they're able to hold their own. They get these paydays or these opportunities to shock the world against the prospects or against the up and rising contenders, and that's who Dennis Douglin is. He's gotten several shots in there against Durrell in the past. He's gotten some good opponents in the past, and he's been able to get some pay, at least his career payoff in that sense, because he's gotten some good work. He's known as someone who's going to get some good work out of the boxers, and he did it again. He delivered. He showed up. He represents himself well, and he gave Ammo Williams everything that he could. Ammo Williams is that good at the moment where he finds himself right now at the point in his career in his ascension up the rankings. He's looking good. He's looking every bit as good, and he should start fighting a little bit tougher opposition than Dennis Douglin for his next matchup, or maybe the next couple matchups. Hopefully, I no doubt that the matchmaking they're doing really good over at Matchroom. We move on. The first of the 3 title fights. This is the one that I was really excited about. Jessica McCaskill walking in with all of the titles this time. All the conversation of whether it was a fluke decision the first go around, whether it was a biased decision by way of the judges, where the judges took all Cecilia Brækhus's reign and titles away from her. All the talk was cleared up. It was a good fight. Frustrating fight at times. Cecilia Brækhus, the better of the 2 boxers, definitely the more refined of the 2 boxers, but was not able to execute her game plan, could never get going because of the style of fight that Jessica McCaskill presents and the problems that she presents. She drops her head, she leans in with her head, often generating headbutts or getting close to it, but they definitely bumped heads several times during the fight. She leans in with the head, drops to the left, throws the overhand right, leans in with the head, drops to the right, overhand left, and Cecilia Braquez's hands continuously were caught down, and she was getting connected with those overhand punches. One thing that Jessica McCaskill does similar is to Clarissa Shields, having seen her recent fight against Marie-Eve Decaire, is they do not generate their punches from when inside the pocket. They don't generate their punches, and they don't fight out of the pocket from the bottom up, meaning connecting inside by way of the stomach, building their combination up towards the chest and out the face to be able to generate their space and step back and create that reactionary gap in that space. They get caught in the clinch. They start messing around with the semi-clinch, with the semi-pushing going on, sloppy inside work, and then they're throwing these wide punches, these wide looping overhand punches, where often the forearms are catching the opponent in the head or the side of the head. Maybe some elbow work in there during the rounds. So it's a very dirty boxing, very gritty style of fight that Jessica McCaskill presents, and she's very good at it. It's not to say that she doesn't have very good boxing skills. She's a good boxer from a distance. She knows how to keep her distance, but whenever she gets in the pocket is where it seems to go downhill for her. But to her credit, those looping punches, those overhand punches, is what got her the scores, because she was connecting those over and over and over throughout the fight. And Cecilia Braquez just almost like she kept forgetting that those punches were coming every time they would go in. Towards the end, towards the last few rounds, you saw that Cecilia Braquez was holding McCaskill's head down and the back of her neck down in trying to prevent those punches from coming and leaning back. In the last few rounds, I think the last 3 rounds, I actually scored for Braquez herself, but it was too late. It was too late. Jessica McCaskill owned the first portion of the fight, the majority of the rounds, and it was just because of that. By the time Braquez started figuring her out, it was a little too late, and the judges' scorecards reflected that. Jessica McCaskill proves that it was no fluke. She cements herself as the undisputed champion in the welterweight division, as the who's who in the welterweight division, and has dethroned the long-reigning champ in Cecilia Braquez. Jessica McCaskill moves on to bigger and better things, 10-2 now, and she is a who's who in that division. I'm excited to see as she continues to advance in her career, and now with the growing confidence as the undisputed champ, I have no doubts that her boxing is going to get even more refined and that she's going to get even better and better as we see her, even though she's a little bit older than the majority of the other fighters. She's in her mid-30s. I think she's a young mid-30s. The way that she looks, she does have a little bit of a stamina issue. And that was also present in the first fight. And that's something that I was curious about seeing in this fight, if she was going to start gassing out in the middle of the fight and also towards the latter rounds. And it happened again. It seems to have presented itself again. So that may be something that they work on. Getting that stamina issue out of the way would give her a little more fight, a little more decisiveness when it comes to these decisions. If it's going to be decision after decision win, she'll be a little more decisive just by fixing the stamina, because she'll be able to generate the attack and that heavy approach that she starts with. She starts very fast. She's head on. She goes right after her opponents. And then that's one of the reasons that causes. I mean, she throws punches and bunches, and that's one of the causes for the stamina. Is it fixable? Absolutely. We've seen this time and time again with some high-profile names, like Canelo used to be known for running out of stamina. In the UFC, Conor McGregor is known for running out of stamina later in the rounds. And it seems like they've tweaked those to their favor, to where they figured out what those issues were. Definitely Canelo, more so than McGregor in the UFC. Canelo definitely just put that to an end. His stamina is at an all-time high, and And again, I mean, this is not to jump on the Canelo train, but it's just an example that pops in my head as to stamina. It's doable. She could definitely fix it. She could definitely tweak that. And to avoid gassing out in the latter rounds, I think just that one tweak between now and her next fight will pay dividends for Jessica McCaskill, to where maybe she can actually get the knockout in her next victory, become somewhat of a knockout artist, because she does have power, and they respect her power because it's disrupting the flow of the fight and disrupting the strategy that the opponents try to impose on her. So she definitely has some pop in those, behind those punches, and it's evident. Congratulations to Jessica McCaskill. I thought that could have been a headlining fight in itself. It was the first of the 3 title fights. And I'm sorry, the first of the 3 title fights as it was listed. When we saw it on Saturday night, it was actually the co-main event, as it should have been. Hiroto Kyoguchi actually ended up fighting Axel Vega before that. On paper, it was supposed to be the co-main event. It got actually changed around by the time that we saw it on TV, and it aired live. And that's the next one that we should touch on. Hiroto Kyoguchi, the light flyweight title. Awesome fight against Axel Vega. Axel Vega looking to be, what do they call him, Mini-Me or Mini? Oh, El Mini is his nickname. And it caught my attention when I was watching this. El Mini. I didn't know much about Axel Vega. I knew he was a journeyman. I hadn't done too much research on him, and I was beyond impressed when I'm watching him. He was getting off his punches, getting off his attack, generating good action. Most of the action was because of Axel Vega. He was just pushing forward and going at Kyoguchi, no respect at all. Not caring who this guy was or believing the hype of this guy. He went at him. The sad part is that the fight ends. The fight ends in the 5th round after Vega throws, and if I remember correctly, it was his right hand that ends up getting injured after an exchange. He ends up wincing in pain, backs up, goes against the ropes, starts ducking. Kyoguchi closes in the gap in an awkward type of pause because no one knew what was going on. Kyoguchi knew that the fighter was still up on his feet, lunged in, threw a good punch which partially caught Vega as he was ducking, kind of rolled the punch off, and then the referee stepped in. They stopped the fight. What happened? Did he break his hand? I still haven't seen the report as to what happened, but you saw the immediate swelling when they remove the glove. The top of the right hand immediately swelling, immediately purple, and you just saw it. It was unsure whether it was his knuckles that broke, fingers, if it was his wrist, what happened, but it was definitely a right hand injury that he suffered. And it was an awesome fight. I would love to see Axel Vega again. I would love to see this be a rematch down the line. Not immediate. Obviously, he's got to recover, but both fighters impressive. Kyoguchi impressed me because it's not just a hype job. He takes a lot of punishment, and he delivers a lot of punishment himself. So he moves on to be 15-0, keeps his title. He's the WBA Super World Light Flyweight Champion, and impressed with both of these fighters. Vega, the more seasoned of the 2 fighters, and I can't wait to see him. The talk during the fight, I don't know if this is true or not, but I was trying to look into it, and I'm going to go look into it. The talk during the fight, the commentators made a quick comment that caught my attention, and they were saying that if he was to win the fight, he would be the shortest fighter in the history of boxing to hold a world title. And I begin to see why. And he's questionable whether he's 4'9" or 5 foot tall, depending on where you look. He's no wonder they call him El Mini. He's 4'9.5" in some sites, 4'9", 5 foot tall as they report him in some other sites. Listen, unless you're standing next to him, you won't know. Unless you actually take a measuring tape to him, you won't know. But if he was, that would have been history, right, in itself. Kind of a Muggsy Bogues type moment. Muggsy Bogues, legendary basketball player for those of you that don't know NBA of yesteryear. But El Mini impressed me a lot. He's game. He's as game as they come, and it's impressive to watch a fight like that. It was fun, back and forth, old school boxing. So hands down, or my hats off to both of these fighters. Kyoguchi, sky's the limit for this kid. The ascension up the rankings for him as he finds himself now defending a title, having defended a title, and moving on to hopefully unify the division. That'll be the awesome part to watch. So we move on to the main event. And of course, the main event was between Juan Francisco Estrada, El Gallo Estrada, versus Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez out of Nicaragua. This is a fight, a rematch that had been long in the making, nearly 9 years in the making, and it didn't disappoint. This thing went all the way. The scores were back and forth. You didn't know who got this round, who got that round. I ended up scoring it. If you follow my Instagram, I'll attach my scorecard to the post, to the Instagram post. I normally put an Instagram post as a heading for each episode, for each podcast. So if you haven't checked out my Instagram page, check it out. I'll post my scorecard as I had it, and I ended up with a draw. Chocolatito was starting to run away with that fight in the latter rounds. In the 11th round, I gave to Gallo Estrada, and the 12th to Chocolatito. And that 11th round seems to have been the difference maker in my card, and it ended up being a draw. Now, the judges, as they saw it, Jesse Reyes ends up giving 115-113 for Chocolatito. I could do that. I could go with that. That 11th round, should I have given it to Chocolatito, that whole latter part of the rounds would have been a sweep of on behalf of Chocolatito, and it would have been a 115-113 instead of a 114-114. So I'm okay with that. It could have gone either way. I'm okay with that. That score was fine. David Sutherland gave it 115-113 to Gallo Estrada. So any of those rounds that I gave to Chocolatito, and a lot of them were really, really tight rounds, any of those could have been a swing round for Gallo Estrada. They could have seen it for one fighter. Somebody else sees it for the other fighter, just like Jesse Reyes saw it 115-113 for Chocolatito. Sutherland had an awesome score, 115-113, 2-point win for Gallo Estrada. The one that nobody was okay with was Carlos Sucre's score, 117-111, landslide scoring for Gallo Estrada. What fight were you watching? That's what makes fans angry. When you see scores like this, it happens, and it seems like it's happening a lot. It used to happen in big profile fights in the past, and people would immediately jump to the robbery claims. This was fixed. And it's because of this. It's because of judges like this. Was this a biased score? Was this an uneducated score? I'm leaning more towards the latter. At least my faith in boxing and the sport of boxing, my love for the sport of boxing, sways me to believe in the latter of the two, that this was an uneducated judge or an uneducated night. Maybe he just had a bad night. The problem is that you have a bad night on such a high profile fight, and you affect both of these boxers' careers. You basically just sent their careers. You dictate the direction of their careers by giving them a score like this, because it had a lot of implications. Chocolatito loses his title. Gallo Estrada unifies. You just affected a career, but two careers at that, by not paying attention, by spazzing out, or by not knowing what you're doing. In that sense, it would be an uneducated judge. Carlos Sucre delivers 117, 111 for Gallo Estrada, which means he was just focused on Gallo Estrada and not on Chocolatito. He was impressed by what Gallo Estrada was doing and not giving any respect or any love for the effectiveness of Chocolatito. If you look at the CompuBox, they threw over 2,500 punches combined. That is insane. And it was, to their credit, this was as throwback as you could get. When people want to throw back these fights to, we just saw it a few weeks ago with Valdez Burchelt. Is this going to be this era's Barrera Morales? Is this going to be this era's Corrales Castillo? Is this, all these comparisons, right? That fight, as good as a performance as Valdez and as good as a fight as we had a few weeks ago between Valdez and Burchelt, that fight did not compare to this. It was amazing in its own right, but this was throwback as hell. This is purity. This was pure boxing. This was refined boxing. This was skill, strategy. And if you caught my preview show, I told you this was going to be a chess match, and it was down right to the wire. Every punch mattered. Every feint mattered. Every little bit of defense mattered, because it was the difference of whether you got hit with a punch or you connected and returned a punch, whether you blocked a punch. It was that highly contested where every punch mattered. And it wasn't a punch or punches trying to generate an attack. This was all out war, all out attack. And with over 2,500 punches being thrown in combination between the two fighters, the majority of those punches were being effective in one way or another, even if they're not clean shots to the head, even if they're not clean shots to the body. You're still hurting the arms. You're still softening up the guard. You're softening up the shoulders. You're causing pain to those arms to start dropping a little bit lower. You're gassing the other fighter from constantly being tense in defense and on guard. So all that strategy, all that goes into the effects of the fight. You saw Gallo Estrada start slowing down, and that's when I saw Chocolatito walking away with it. A lot of it, I think, has to do with the body work. You would see Gallo Estrada focusing and headhunting early in the fight, and Chocolatito was constantly pressuring that body, going into the body, constantly pressuring, constantly connecting. And I think that started taking an effect around the 7th round for Gallo Estrada, where you see him slowing down. 7th round was one of the key swing rounds that some people had it for Gallo, some people had it for Chocolatito. I'll post my card on Instagram. Start following my Instagram posts, as I'll have some cool stuff for you guys here in the upcoming days. And that's usually my links to each and every episode. If you haven't checked it out, I was all over Twitter on Saturday. It was an exciting night of boxing. And then Friday, I was all over Twitter as well with Sor Rumbisai, because I was just imagining the picture, right? Like, who wins tomorrow? If he's looking really good right now, who's he gonna? All depends on how these guys look tomorrow to see how Sor Rumbisai is gonna match up with them. The way that Chocolatito showed up, I had picked Gallo Estrada to win, but not because of that landslide score. I was picking Gallo Estrada to win because I thought he's in a different level in his career, where Chocolatito, I see him like he's in the descension as Gallo Estrada has continued to ascend in the division and in his career. I saw Chocolatito starting to fizzle out a little bit. That's not the case. That Chocolatito put on a performance of a lifetime, and if people are saying that he was robbed, it was that close of a fight to where they could make that claim. It's okay for them to make the claim, because those other two scores were right. It was that tight of a score, and there's a round in there, or a couple rounds in there, that may have swung one way or the other. In a perfect world, they could have swung one way or the other, giving that victory to Chocolatito instead of Gallo Estrada. And then the other party would have been claiming that Gallo Estrada was robbed, blah, blah, blah. But it was that good of a fight to where those arguments are valid. Now, should we have had another 115, 113 for Gallo Estrada, nobody would be fighting it. If somebody would have given, even if somebody gave a 114, 114, this would have been a draw. then it would have been a split draw. Nobody would have argued with that because it was that good. These guys walk away with their respective titles. It was that good of a fight. If it was a 116, 112, I don't think people would have argued that either. But the 117, 111 is a landslide of a multitude of rounds that they just saw it for one fighter over the other, and it raises the questions of biasness. So that was that. That was the cap. That was the downfall of the card. It diminished the value and the quality of fight that we saw. And it sucks because they took the attention away from an amazing fight that should go down as, hands down, right now, it's the fight of the year candidate for 2021 in this early of a year. So I'm sure there's going to be some more amazing fights this year, and this one's going to it's going to go on the back burner, and people are going to forget about this. But at this point, it's at the forefront of my head, similar to last year when Gallo Estrada had that rematch against Carlos Cuadras, and people just forgot about it. So they go with the recent memory. But this one, amazing fight. And with that said, well, we move on to Gallo Estrada and Sor Rungvisai, who's the mandatory. He did his job on Friday. He sat down. He was just watching this fight, waiting to see who the winner was. And now he sees what he's got in front of him. He's made the comments already during the week in the lead into his fight that if he fights Gallo Estrada again, that he's going to make easy work of him. Now they're going to step in the ring later this year. Who knows what month they get it on. It looks like it's probably looming for September. Hopefully it happens sooner, but it's going to be good for Chocolatito. We'll see what comes next for his career, but he should not hang his head. He rightfully, if he feels like he won this fight, it could have swung his way as well, and I agree. It was that tight of a fight, and he doesn't need to hang his head. He needs to go after the other titles and stay where he's at, because he's fighting amazing at this point. Now, with that said, all this excitement, this great evening of fights that's taking place, we switch over to the UFC. The UFC had an entertaining card, mostly unknown names, some known names, some known prospects and contenders that were in there. But the main event was the hype of the night there, the return of Leon Edwards after everything he went through in 2020 or dating back to 2019, where he just had problem after problem, then the COVID, then the travel restrictions, and you name it. And he just suffered it all to where he couldn't get back in. We didn't know what version of Leon Edwards was going to be present on Saturday night against Belal Muhammad, who had just an awesome performance earlier in the year. And because of that performance, he climbed himself into a main event card thanks to that previous performance he had, and replaced Kazmat Chimaev, who continues to suffer from his COVID-19 infection earlier in the year. Belal Muhammad gets himself into a main event. It was a very good fight. It started to see like things were swinging for Leon Edwards as he was starting to put his attacks fairly well. He got a good kick on Belal Muhammad, but Belal Muhammad didn't seem shaken by it. But it was a clean kick to the side of the head, to the neck, left kick to the right side of Belal Muhammad. It looked like Leon Edwards was going to start taking over, but it was still early. Belal Muhammad was a game fighter, and then came the eye poke. And it was sad to see that the fight ended. There was a lot of expectation behind this fight, and it ended by way of eye poke. It looked painful. It looked horrible. Belal Muhammad's eye took a big gouge. Afterwards, they reported that he was fine, that he didn't take any major damage to his eyeball, or the eye socket itself, but he's going to be out for a little bit. And now the questions arise: was this performance good enough to get Leon Edwards into an immediate title fight against Usman? So it sucks. he didn't look like he was suffering from any ring rust. Leon Edwards looked like he had just fought a few weeks ago or maybe a couple months ago. He looked fresh, he looked good, and it looks like he's staying in really good shape and he's staying active. And he got in there and started doing work. They circled around the octagon for a little bit, maybe for about the first 30 seconds to a minute to kick off the fight, as there was a lot of intensity and a lot of nerves on both ends. But once they got going, they started putting their attacks fairly well, and then the eye poke happens. So sad to see that it ended that way. Who knows what's going to happen with Leon Edwards, if they're going to actually put him back in or get him immediately into a title shot, or if he's going to have to take another fight because of this ending to this fight. So that was horrible news. As that happened, I believe the Jessica McCaskill card against Cecilia Braquez, that fight was starting to take place. So my attention, of course, went back to the main event of the night in my eyes, which was boxing. And to bring the mood down, or at least I don't want to bring the mood down a little bit, but as the night was progressing, you start seeing messages come out that one of the legends, Marvin Hagler, one of the Four Kings, Marvin Hagler had passed away at the age of 66. Very little news around it. It seemed like it was due to natural causes, but it was quick and a lot of hesitation. You start looking up these news, and this is late in the evening already, Saturday evening, as the news are breaking. To kick off the main event, there was a moment of silence that Bruce Buffer held there, and it was just, it caught you off guard, right? And in a night with so many highs, this was a low, and it was one that it was unexpected. One of the Four Kings passes away, marvelous Marvin Hagler at the age of 66. And let's take a quick 10 seconds out of respect to a man who is not one of the greatest fighters of all time, and not just one of the greatest middleweights. I should premise that, not just one of the greatest middleweights of all time, but an all-time great, one of the greatest fighters that boxing has ever had step in the ring. This guy is a legend. If you don't know much about Marvin Hagler, the beautiful thing that we have nowadays with technology is YouTube. Go to YouTube, watch his fights. You could find his fights on sale on Amazon, on eBay, on you name it. Just look up his fights. You could buy DVDs on him. He was known as one of the Four Kings. He was a legend. And so I'll dedicate a future episode to him. But right now, let's take a quick 10 seconds of silence and in remembrance and in honor of the legend that was Marvin Hagler. I leave you all with that. Thank you guys again for tuning into the Tomatolito show. What an amazing weekend it was. And obviously, on a more somber note, we lost a great. Thank you guys for tuning into the Tomatolito show. I will see you all, catch you all on the next episode. And stay tuned. I told you guys a while back that I took a big break. I'm putting some things together. Some big things are coming for the show. And I got some surprises for you guys. So thank you guys again for being my loyal supporters, for being there each and every episode. And I got some big things coming here in the coming days and in the coming weeks. So thank you guys again. Don't forget, check out the Instagram. I'll post my card for the Gallo Estrada and Chocolatito Gonzalez fight. So thank you guys. Talk to you soon. Stay safe. Take care of yourselves. Have a good night.